Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining to my talk. I wish I could have been in Poznań with all of you and see you in person and just talk. But we have what we have in these times, so we have to deal with it. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about music to Arboria, how I approached it, and why we changed it in the middle of production. And also I will talk some technical stuff in Unreal Engine 4. So yeah, let's start, let's dive in. So something about me, I'm working as a composer and I've been in game dev for 10 years. I also worked as a programmer in Unity mostly, and also as a video game tester. And here's a short list of the works I've done. And today I'm going to talk about my one of my recent works, what is Arboria. So let's discuss what Arboria is. So it is a 3D roguelite action RPG made by Dreamplant studio in Bydgoszcz and published by All In Games. At the moment it is in Steam Early Access, and the developers are updating it frequently. By the way, best wishes to the developers from Dreamplant Studio. And in short, Arboria is about a tribe of Jotuns, troll-like warriors who find out that there is a danger to their tribe and they want to find out what it is and stop it, obviously. Okay, and I will show you some screenshots from the game so you can see the mood of the game. And I joined the production team quite early in the process because it was in 2018, so 2 years ago. And during that time, the game was quite early in the production. I would say it was in pre-alpha. But at that moment, it had quite a lot to say what it is about and what it needs from me. So when we talked, we discussed that it needs some tribal and primitive elements because the Jotuns are not extraordinary civilization. They are just tribal community. It's a mix of dark fantasy and science fiction, but the dark fantasy at the time was more important. And one thing that I noticed also, that it's a swampy mood. Like if you look at the pictures, it's rather dark and there is a strange vegetation. And because of the fact that the most of the game takes place in the underground, so it kind of reminds like a very dark dungeon-like swamp. And there was a moment that we had to change all of this, maybe not all of this, but a lot. First of all, because of the fact that I uploaded a video that my client loved. It's called Tales of Comets, if you want to check it. And my client wanted it one-to-one moved to the game with some slight changes. And I was reluctant at first, but I incorporated some of the elements into the game. And also it meant that we moved the whole music into a whole sound palette closer to science fiction elements. Also because there were more elements more sci-fi elements in the game. And there was one also thing that because there was not much for me to do at the time, I hadn't been following the production process very closely. So when I got back, I had like a fresh point of view. I had a fresh, I saw some changes that influenced me. And also, as it says, there were some changes and additions that needed some music touch from me. And also I got some new tricks and experience in that time. So now I'm going to walk through some of the examples of the changes I made in the game. And the first one is main menu music. As you might know, the main menu is like one of the most important places in the game because it's the first place that player encounters apart from loading screen and logos, but it sets the whole musical experience for the player. And because the player visits this place like every time, it can influence his gameplay and how he feels during the game. So now I'm going to play you a fragment of the previous main menu theme. Okay, I think that it will be enough. So as you could hear, it is a bit dark, maybe too depressive. It was. I thought that because the game is set in the dark environment, it would be nice to emphasize it and to make it dark, unwelcoming. But the client said, when we had to change it, said that it was too depressive for him. So he felt that the Jotuns are going for an execution rather than to fight for their survival and for an adventure. So having those notes in mind and what I said before about the whole change, I came up with the new version of main menu theme. Okay, so as you could hear, it was much lighter in sound. There was more movement. There was more dynamic, I would say. It had the same bass, I would say. That it also featured drums, female vocals, but it featured more light sound of the electronics. And it was setting much more optimistic, adventurous mood. And versus the dark, low register sounds from the previous version. And what was interesting after I presented this new main menu theme was that the developers liked both of them. They admitted that both pieces were great, but the second one fitted the game much better, and because it sets the different mood, and that was the mood they were aiming for. So right now I'm going to talk about camp, and it's like the main hub of the game. So player visits it between runs. And he has a chance to to gather his strength, to upgrade the camp and also his equipment or her equipment. And it was quite a calm and peaceful place. So I'm not going to play you the previous track for camp because I lost it in the iteration process. But let's say that it sounded like a common tribal community music with some plugged instruments and drums, and it was just one track. And when the moment to change appeared, there appears also one element in the game that wasn't previously. So the altar of the gods appeared. So why is it important? After each run, the in-game currency, in-game resource called Vary is being collected, and then it is given to gods. And how much value you give to them, it affects how happy they will be and what bonuses or problems you will have in the camp. So they can be angry, they can be neutral, and 2 levels of happiness. And I felt that it was important to emphasize in the music. So I prepared 4 variants for each level of the happiness of gods, and I'm going to play you the lowest level and the highest. Yeah, and now, oh, sorry. And the second one. So you could have heard that we have like the same track, but in 2 different variations. And the first one was a bit depressive and a bit sad, like going for an execution. But the second one was much lighter and was much more optimistic. And I felt that it was important to put those 4 variants in the game because if you look closely to the screenshots, you can notice that when the gods are angry, the color palette is slightly colder than when they are happy. And I felt that it needed emphasis with music because sometimes people just rush through camp and then they don't take notice of how everything looks like, but with this music they can also feel it, that the other Jotuns are not feeling quite good because we didn't give much very to gods, or they feel happy about how that gods are happy, and it also affects the gameplay. So I felt that it was important. Yeah, so it just felt that I had to do something about it. And now I'm going to move to dungeons, which is the place where the player spends most of time fighting monsters and exploring, looking for Very, and also looking for clues what is threatening the Jotuns. And as you can see, it is a dark place. And it is a very unwelcoming place, unfamiliar. So players shouldn't feel too safe. And before I play you the track that was before the change, I will say that there was one looping ambient, and on top of that, depending on how many enemies we encounter, I layered some action. I layered some action layers, and it was inspired by Echo, a game called game by company Ultra, and it featured like the same mechanic, but it was much more complex. So I tried to implement that in the game. So yeah, let's hear it. So this is the base ambient. It is quite eerie, dark, like something in the background, lurking in the shadows. And let's say we start to fight an enemy. Okay, so I will make the volume down. So as you can hear, there's something new, pulsing, that is very rhythmic. and a new synth element. And let's say we encounter more enemies. So I added a new layer that is setting a new adrenaline level. And let's say we are like on top. Okay, so this approach didn't work. Oh, I have a break in the slide. So it didn't work as planned because enemies that we encountered in the game could have been beaten in seconds. Like you attack an enemy, a bug, and it dies after 2 or 3 seconds of hitting. And because of that, the testers said that they didn't feel the music, they didn't notice it. And the client asked me to make it louder, maybe more tense. And I didn't want to do it because it would cause tension spikes. So if you look on the right, you see that if we enter the tension mode, and we fight the enemy, 2 seconds, 3 seconds later, we have to volume down the action music. And it would cause many spikes. And I knew that if the player experiences it, they are going to turn the music off. And I didn't know at the time. I didn't know what to do about it, so I just left it for a moment, and luckily the developers at the time of the change introduced a new element in the game. They were chests and roots of Father Tree, which is the central point of camp. And if we want to open those chests or heal the roots of Father Tree, we activated a wave-based combat. So there are 1, 2, or 3 waves of enemies approaching, and we have to beat them up. And I felt that we should remove music from the common combat and move it to those 2 places. And it worked much better because once we implemented it, the developers said that it gave much more significance to the combat. It gave much more power. Also because it was because there were those big moments, and also I changed a bit the ambient tracks, so they fade in and fade out smoothly. So there's also some room for a break for our ears. And one of the things that I learned at that moment was that sometimes it's better to remove something or move somewhere totally else than to fix it and tweak it, because it might be much more problematic for us. As I said, fixing those tension spikes might have been a very big problem for us. So those were the 3 elements that needed much more change in the approach of music. And now I'm going to move to a technical aspect of this change and how I approached music. So as you saw earlier, it was layered system, and I felt that it needed more linearity. And with linearity, I mean that like there is no layers, but like it's a sequence of tracks, and I wanted tempo synchronization and more flexibility with that. So in this example, it's a screenshot from my DAW Reaper, and you can see that there are 3 tracks for combat. And I wanted to switch from one track to another, and switch them on beat. So those vertical lines are the beats, and on the second beat in the fourth bar, I wanted to switch to a transition track and then to combat loop. And also I wanted to keep the tails, so it worked much better with synchronizing of all of the elements. I also wanted to make much more complicated sequences. So this is one of the examples. This is an example from a scheme I gave to developers when I was telling them how to implement music in a interactive cutscene. And also with those tempo synchronization and more flexibility, I didn't want to force the developer to get F mod or Ys, not only because they cost much, but also because it would require them to maintain the plugins in the game, in the editor, and I didn't want them to do that. And at the same time, sticking with what Unreal Engine 4, like this base functionality, wasn't the best idea. Here's example of setting a timer by event. So I wanted to have like 90 beats per minute. I wanted the event to tick 90 times per minute, or if you look at the time property, it's 0.6 times per second. And it was a bad choice because because it's based on game thread and there might be lagging. So it would cause some hiccups in the music, and there would be some synchronization problems, and we wanted to avoid that. And luckily there was a Timesynth, which is a plugin for Unreal Engine 4. Michał Korniewicz in his talk said some things about Timesynth, but I'm going to go slightly deeper than him. And so basically Timesynth allows to synchronize all the game events to a certain clock, given by sound cue. And this clock is divided to sync points, what is called quantization. And what is very important, it is independent from the game thread, or at least it should be, according to the developers from Unreal Engine. So whenever the game is lagging, the Timesynth should be the Timesynth clock should be going interrupted. And it looked like a perfect tool because it was made internal. It is being made internally by Epic Games. But I had to show the developers how it works because it needs some preparation. So, sorry, there is going to be some basic music theory. There's some basic stuff. It will all the things you need to know for Timesynth. So let's start. So it might look like a lot, but it's quite simple. So as I said, Timesynth is based on a clock. And this clock is set by beats per minute. It's like the universal tempo marking for many audio software on the market. And when we set the tempo, we also want to know how many beats there are in one cycle called a bar. So for now, let's say that we have 4 beats in a bar. So every 4 beats, like the next bar starts. And quantization informs us how many sync points, how sync points will be divided in the bar. So in this example on the left, you have global quantization to 1 bar. So it means that each first note, each first beat in a bar will be the sync point. So the Timesynth will wait for the whole bar to this to this sync point to start a new logic in the game. And also there is a special Timesynth clip in Unreal Engine 4, and this is all on the right. You see all the stuff from this Timesynth clip. And there are some parameters, but the most important thing is clip duration. And it sets how long the clip is to be set to be playing before it stops. And it's very important to remember how long is the clip, because Timesynth has this very mean attitude that if it sets to a too low number, it just stops the track. It just stops the music, and it's not nice. So that's also very important thing to remember. And also, as I said earlier, so with the sync points. So let's say in this view, those vertical lines are the sync points. And if I call to change the track right before the sync point, the Timesynth will wait to the sync point, and then it will activate the change of the whole system. Yeah, in this example, as I said earlier, in the interactive cutscene, in those A places, A, C, E, these tracks are looping, so they like how to say to if when one clip stops, then the second one is starting. And in few moments, there are places when the non-interactive part starts, and then we activate the transition. And because it is synchronized to a clock, and the synchronized points are and the tempo is quite fast, then a small delay will be barely unnoticeable. So that's also very nice if you want to have interactive cutscene with a few elements where the game is waiting for the player's input. Or maybe if you want to skip the cutscene, then without losing the tempo, we are just going straight into the music that is after the cutscene. For example, if there is an intro cutscene for a boss fight, then we are waiting, then we can skip it and it stays in the tempo we set. Okay, so now I'm going to show you an example in Unreal Engine 4. So this is like very, very basic example I shown to the developers, and like a bit cleaner than what was at first. So when I press a space bar, then I get component from Timesynth actor that is set on the scene. I set the Timesynth reference, and I add the event delegate. So it sets the delegate to tick in a certain tempo and in the certain quantization. In this particular scenario, it's 1/4, and it means that it's going to tick on every beat in the track that I want to be playing. So after this, I play a music loop. So I start a clip, and that is connected to Timesynth. There are 3 combat clips depending on what phase of the fight we are in, and then I set the reference to this currently played clip, and I set the iterator, which is my counter, for the rest. So there is a sequence of 4 branches. So as I said earlier, I wanted to keep the tails of the tracks because it makes much easier to to put the elements together, put the tracks together. So the track isn't starting with like this strange end of reverb or end of tail. So I tell the developers where is the moment the tail starts, and this is this loop limit. And with each tick, I wait for the counter to check if it's okay to change to the next loop. So if it's okay, then I play the next loop. And lower, I'm checking if I want to start a transition, and the transition looks quite similar to the loop, playing the loop, but I stop currently played clip in the Timesynth. I set my own fade time, and also maybe, well, this one is not really needed, but I played the transition clip depending on the phase. And then I start like waiting for the transition to end, and then I'm just starting another loop. Sorry, loop for the compound music. And at the end, if I want to end the fight, then I play the end music. So I stop the currently played clip and play the end track. So now I'm going to show you how it works live. Okay, so right now nothing is going on, and now I'm starting the fight. As you can see, there is counter in the left corner. So now I'm going to maybe I will slowly make it. Okay. I want to make the transition to the next wave. So the transition was on beat. There was no mess in rhythm, and it was quite smooth. So let's say we are doing another phase, another wave. So once again, it was smooth. And now we are ending the fight. Yeah, so that's how it works. So going back to the talk. Now I want to address one thing about using plugins that are currently in beta, because Timesynth is still in beta in Unreal Engine. And in a year ago, when I introduced the developers to the Timesynth, we had a problem with quantization. So whenever we set the quantization to 1/4, it divided the bars into chunks of 4. So no matter how long the bar was, how many beats there were, it was always dividing it into 4. And it was a problem because I, as a composer, like to put irregular time in my music. So if I wanted to make 9 beats in a bar and I wanted quantization 1/4, it was dividing it like this. So the sync points were quite off beat, except for the first one. And our solution was to make this 9/4 to 1/4. So the bar length was just 1 beat, and we set the quantization to 1 bar. Luckily, the problem was fixed in next releases, and I checked it before the presentation, so I didn't say something stupid. But this quantization 1/4 is like, and now the quantization should work properly. And I'm saying it also because Michał in his talk said something about quartz, which is a new audio system in Unreal Engine 4 that is that is available in 4.26, which is currently in preview. And after his talk, I quickly checked it in the engine and how it looks like. And I'll say that there was one feature that I liked. So if we have, for example, 8 beats in a bar, and I want to divide it like 3 beats, 2 beats, then in Timesynth it is very hard to do it. But in Quartz you can make this division in blueprints. And it's one of the features I really liked, but when I looked how the initialization looks like, I felt that it's a bit overkill. They also add some new features and also some new parameters we can dive into and check. But at the same time, if we look at how Timesynth looks like, it's much cleaner. So again, and if I wanted to, if I was set to choose Quartz or Timesynth, then I would definitely go with Timesynth because it's much easier. Of course, it has some issues with irregular bars. It might have issues with synchronizing the irregular bars, like in this example, if we want 3 + 3 + 2. But it can be overcome. So with some programming, with some blueprint scripting, it's all possible. But I wouldn't go with Quartz also because it's still at the beginning of it. It's not tested widely by the audience. So yeah, I wouldn't choose it at first. Also, if I were to choose, for example, Fmod or Wise versus Timesynth, I would definitely go to Fmod because it's much easier to implement audio or music into the game. And yeah, some final thoughts for my presentation. So if the game changes and those changes are important, then it's important for us also to adapt the music we prepare, because what we left previously might not work, and also maybe there are some changes that change mood slightly, or maybe there are synchronization problems, or maybe we want to emphasize something or maybe lower the emphasis on something else. And sometimes it means getting rid of tracks that doesn't work. And in this situation, the client didn't like the fact that we had to remove, we had to overwrite the music in combat. But I said that I would move it to prologue level in Arboria, and it worked quite well. I prepared it for the new timestamp system, and it works quite good. Also, clients' needs are the most important in every project. So even if you make something great, and even if the developers like it, you must remember, and also if the clients don't know how to express it, but once you know what they want, once you know how to do it, you should do it, because you are working for the client and not for yourself. And also one very important rule that I learned a couple of times the hard way, that it's important to show, not tell. So you can say anything you want, but you have to show it, and because it's much more memorable, and also you have to make a good first impression. So in example, when I wanted to show the Timesynth, I had to show to developers that it's easy to use, that it's manageable, and it's easy to overcome. It's easy to overcome its problems. So it's also important to know the pros and cons of the tools you want to use. Okay, so that will be all from me. Thank you very much for being here with me. As I said, I wish to be in Poznań with all of you, and I hope that we'll see the next year. Here's a list of some contact addresses to me. I hope that this QR code is working because it's the first time I'm doing it. It should link to my website. Yeah, if you have any questions, then just ask right now. Or if you don't know, or if you don't have a question now, I will go to Discord server after the talk and we'll hang out for a moment on the voice channel. So you can also talk to me then. Or maybe by email, Twitter, or... So thank you very much again, and I'm waiting for the questions. Still waiting for questions. Maybe you want me to show something else in Unreal Engine, or maybe something else. I don't know. Okay, it seems that there are no questions from you guys. I'm really disappointed in you. Okay, never mind. So once again, thank you very much. If you want to talk to me right now, then I will be hanging out on Discord. So see you around. Draco out.